Hello, advanced financial planning students. We're now in week 3. It's January 25th, Sunday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. This week, I guess, if you watch football, you get a little bit of a break, and we'll have the Super Bowl next weekend. So we'll see what happens the following week. But anyway, for this week, you do have your first exam out there. It's already out there in a Word document. You'll just respond back in a one-page Word document with your letter answers. I've given you so it'd just be like 1A, 2A, 3A, and I'm giving some example of how to respond back to that. But if you have any questions, let me know. We'll also have a foreign discussion relative about buying a car, because this week it's one of the discussion topics in our readings. Next to a house, it's probably the second largest purchase that we'll ever make. And in theory, again, a car is something we need to get back from point A to B. But we got to be careful about how much money we spend on a car, because it can impact such things as our retirement. And when we add a car to our balance sheet, almost always has negative impact to our net worth. So we have to ask the question, is this helping me meet my financial goals? And there's nothing wrong with having a car, but in some cities, big cities, there's no need to have a car. It actually costs more money. A lot of times people, what they'll do is they'll just rent cars the weekend, or they'll take the mass transportation system. But around where I live in Kansas City, that's not a reality, and you pretty much have to have a car to get around, because the bus system isn't that great. There's no mass transportation system that's very good relative to buses or anything like that, so you really are dependent on the car. So finding something affordable, reasonable, and that's going to make you happy, and knowing that, yeah, it's not going to add value, but it's something that we need. So our forum discussion will focus a little bit on that, where I want you to go out and go to Edmunds.com, do a little research on a car. And it'll be kind of interesting to see when you look at the true cost of owning a car. It's like, wow, maybe this is not a car I really want when I think about how much money I'm going to spend on this car over the next 5 years. So it's just being realistic. So I'll be interested to see what you all say in that forum discussion. With this week, we look at some of the chapters that we look at. We look at chapter 8, and kind of thinking about, again, non-financial assets. That's kind of that discussion of buying a house. Could even be the car, or even your education example. It's all in anticipation of how this is going to improve my future situation, and that can be both explicitly in terms of net worth, or implicitly how it betters our lives. There's all kinds of examples. When we purchased non-financial assets, it can go everything from having good intentions to buy that treadmill after the start of the new year with a new resolution, and you spend $2,000 on a piece of exercise equipment that basically sits in the basement for the rest of your life. So, was that a good investment? Would I have been better off just walking or doing something, doing push-ups around the house? How did this benefit me? But if it is something that you use every day and it improves your health, that's a good example. Implicitly, it would benefit you. But a lot of times, when we buy things, there's a lot of emotion tied to it. Especially, we talked a little bit about the marketing last week in class, and I read another article this past week about that, how stores do a lot, or to try to convince you that you need to have something now. And in financial planning, you have to really think about the long term. How is this going to make me happy or benefit me for the long term? And a lot of this chapter, helps use net present value and internal rate of return, and other financial courses you might have used equivalent annual cost to help you evaluate decisions. Am I better off, saying, buying a brand new hot water heater or buying an instant hot water heater? And if you do the math, probably you're better off just buying a brand new hot water heater. But if implicitly it really you care about the environment or something else like that, that's a goal for you, then maybe you want to do that. But it might be that the instant hot water heater is beneficial as long as you're going to be in the house for a long time. But you have to consider all the factors. How long is it going to last? When will I need to replace it? And that's a little bit this first chapter discusses, making those decisions. When we look at our next chapter, it kind of goes into a lot about making decisions about investments. You look at the different types of investments. It talks about in terms of active versus passive strategies. Some people take an active approach and just constantly managing their investments based on their risk tolerance. That kind of phrase, that standard deviation, is brought up in the chapters. And others take a more passive approach. Maybe I just let somebody else do that for me, or I take a portfolio position that kind of maybe change automatically over time. So even in thinking about investments, my goal is always, how am I making a situation or improvement to increase my net worth over the long run? And for me, that's retirement. Whenever I'm making a decision, really there's no investment out there that's going to give you like a 15% instant rate of return relative to your tax savings, whether it's a 401k, a 403b, or your IRA. So even this year, I think you have until April 15th. If you added another $1,000, that could be almost $200 you're not paying in taxes if you factor in all the federal, state, and local taxes. So that's like an instant return that no security is going to give you out there. And then whatever additional return you would get in that time period too for that return. So those are things to think about and consider, but what is that allocation of portfolio that's going to get us where we want to go, whether it's for retirement or saving for a house or paying for the kids' college, and what is our risk tolerance? And generally, as we go older and getting close to retirement, we generally reduce that risk. I know a lot of people got burned after the subprime crisis and back in the early years after September 11th, where they lost almost half their portfolios, and it took a long time to recoup some of that money. Even my wife, when we were talking about the housing, we bought our house for about $242,000, and it's still not even anywhere near the market price of that from 9 years ago. In fact, I found one across the street that we were surprised we're asking $239,000 for, but that's just the market in our area. So. But it's your choices, and again, it's your risk tolerance. But if you were to look at the long run for the markets, one of the key websites I like to go and show students every once in a while is called Money Chip. And the historical average annual returns in the market have been about 10 to 11% annually over a long period of time. It doesn't mean there's not volatility. It's that can happen. It's just kind of what is your financial needs and what's your time period, and can I afford, if I'm getting close to retirement, to take a big 40% drop in the market if something bad happens. But this chapter mentions a lot of those things, relative to some of those risks out there. But bottom line too, another thing for me when I was thinking about the State of the Union address this week, Obama had pitched the possibility of raising the capital gains tax, and that can impact people too, how they make decisions, whether they want dividends or buying and selling stocks. But since most of our assets are retirement, that it doesn't really impact us as much, but it can impact markets too. I doubt that would happen anytime soon, but that's always a possibility with taxes, and that's something we'll discuss later in the course. Okay, with the last chapter, they look a little bit more, chapter 10 that is, a little bit more at risk. Focus mostly on life insurance in this chapter. Personally, I'm a big fan of term life insurance just because of I believe a lot in the opportunity cost. The probability that you'll ever cash in on a life insurance policy is only about 2 to 3%. But I'm a big believer is that you only insure for what you need. If you were gone and you needed your spouse and kids taken care of, I probably don't want to overinsure, but I just insure what I need to. And sometimes work, and sometimes through your car. Insurance provider may have insurance policies, but those are things you have to really examine and see. What do I want to feel comfortable with, and what do I want to cover in case something bad does happen? So, and also remembering too, you do get some Social Security benefits if you were to die and it paid into the system. And what would I get? You have to factor that into when you're buying any type of life insurance. Okay. Well, I want you all to have a great week. Do send me an email if you have any questions. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you online in the forum discussions, and we'll take care and talk to you soon.